I'm Pepperjack Jones.
Pepperjack, nice to meet you. Brett Landry.
Thank you. All right. In professional wrestling, what is your particular job?
I'm a jack of all trades, really. In front of the camera, I've done ring announcing and interviews and commentary, and been the GM and commissioner a couple places. But most of what I do is behind the scenes. So I've been an agent for matches. I've done a lot of creative consulting. Mainly just your production level of things.
Let me ask you this. Who inspired you to get into professional wrestling? Was it a wrestler, family member?
You know, it's a really good question. I've always wanted to be involved in pro wrestling ever since I was a kid. And of course, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a wrestler, because what kid that watched wrestling didn't want to be? But as I grew older, I really was inspired by, I mean, it sounds a little cheesy at this point, but Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman. It's a cliche, yeah, but those two guys were huge inspirations to me. I always wanted to have the business sense of Eric Bischoff and the creative sense of Paul Heyman, and I'm trying my best to work towards that. So, fingers crossed.
How did you get into professional wrestling?
I had a friend of a friend that knew Luke Hawks, who wrestles all over the world and all over the U.S., and based in New Orleans. And through that friend, I had met him. And it's kind of a long story in between, but I ended up going to wrestling school, Wildcat Sports in New Orleans, and after meeting him, kind of gave me the opportunity to do some like announcing and some interview type stuff, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I was with Wildcat for 4 years or so, and now this is going on my 5.5 years-ish in the wrestling business. Got to do a bunch of other stuff since then, which is great.
Let's see. All right, this is going to be, as a fan, what is your favorite match from TV?
Ooh. So, it's funny that you say this. It would have been a hard question to answer a couple of weeks ago.
Really?
But as difficult as that is for me, because it's hard for me to really say what matches that I really like, and you know, because I critique a lot. A match that I saw that I thought personally was absolutely flawless was Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura at
I've not seen this match.
Yes, there was. Again, I've had difficulties trying to figure out what would be my favorite, but that, without question, has been my favorite on TV so far.
I heard it was amazing. I have not seen it yet.
Definitely check that out if you got the chance.
I'm planning on it. All right. Well, let's see. Do you have a favorite moment from wrestling? You know what I mean? Like Hogan slamming Andre, anything like that. Something that just sticks out in your mind. When you think of wrestling, what's the first moment you can think of in wrestling? What's the first memory you have?
The very first memory that I have of pro wrestling, period, was the NWO attacking the WCW roster at Nitro. Specifically, their first attack right after they formed, where they darted Rey Mysterio into the production trailer in the back. That was my first real memory. I was about, I guess, maybe 7 years old at that point, maybe.
Oh, you were a young kid.
Yeah. That just stuck with me, and the NWO really is the reason that I became a wrestling fan. The NWO and WCW, and I was just so involved with that. Of course, had every NWO team. That was my big thing. Exactly. That's my memory. That's my first wrestling memory.
All right, that's cool. I hadn't had that actually.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you've been around wrestlers a lot. Can you give me a funny story that's happened in front of you or to you from wrestlers? You ain't got to throw anybody under the bus. Just something funny.
I can. It wasn't a wrestler. It was the first day that I met Percy Pringle.
Really?
The late, great Paul Bearer. He helped me out a lot in the very beginning of my career. Great guy, and I miss him terribly. The very first night that I met him, we were upstairs, and we were getting ready to do the show. The show was going to start in about a half hour or so, and the promoter had a bunch of younger guys on the card. And he told Percy, who is by far the veteran in the locker room, he told Percy, he's like, I want you to check these guys out for me and make sure they're up to par. And there was one of the guys standing next to Percy. Percy looks at the promoter and grabs this guy's balls. Just reaches over and gets a big handful of them and squeezes them for a second and looks back at the promoter and he goes, and that is the funniest thing that I was sitting right next to him when that happened. Like, it seems fine to me. And that was
How big did that guy's eyes get?
because what do you do, first of all, when that happens to you, but second of all, when it's
Yeah,
Paul Bearer that is like,
I just
it
got
was-
struck by Paul Bearer.
it was hilarious. Oh man, I miss him a lot. Man, he was great.
I never got to meet him. I met his youngest son, and he's an awesome guy. So
Yeah.
I hated when I heard him die.
Yeah, you know, that was probably the most surreal moment I've had in wrestling.
This is somebody you know on a personal level, right?
Right, and I got to go to his funeral. And I drove to Mobile for his funeral with some of the guys. And it's very odd watching someone on TV while I'm growing up and being a fan of theirs, and then getting into this business that I was absolutely enamored with as a child. And working. And then he passes away. A, he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame in my hometown. And B, I get to go to his funeral, and there's like The Undertaker, Mankind, and Michael P.S. Hayes, and Kane, and all these people that are they're just people.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like wrestling doesn't exist, and these are people that are mourning their friend. And it's super sweet. Like, I can't imagine a character on television and then being there for him and his family at the end. It's the most surreal thing that's ever happened to me in this business.
Let me ask you this, because you're the closest person I've got to talk to. I haven't been able to speak to his son yet. I love the interview. But, okay, they went into WrestleMania with the storyline of Paul Bearer, and they kind of pushed the envelope with that. Do you think they did the right thing, or do you think it was carried over more and they should have left it alone? I just wonder. I mean,
Yeah.
personally, I was kind of on the edge.
I was, you know, the thing is, for me personally, I was a little apprehensive about that. But at the same time, I think that Percy would have been okay with it.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah, like knowing him the way that I did for the brief amount of time that I did know him, I feel like he would have been completely okay using that as a pivot point in the storyline. I don't think he would have had an issue with it. I mean, the implication was that Paul Bearer was undead anyway, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So it all played into itself, and some people thought it was a little bit in poor taste. Like, for instance, when CM Punk poured the ashes out of the urn on The Undertaker, some people thought it was a little bit in poor taste, but Percy would have thought it was awesome.
See, I thought it was more like a dedication to him.
Yeah, it was definitely more
That's
of an
how I
homage.
looked at it.
Yeah,
I tried to
for
do
sure.
that as a wrestler, thinking of it as a dedication, not
Right.
an insult.
And then at the end of everything, when it all came to be, and he was being inducted into the Hall of Fame the night before WrestleMania, The Undertaker, it's like a company rule. He does not appear at Hall of Fame ceremonies because Vince wants to keep the mystique of his character. Totally cool, I understand that.
Yeah, I get that.
But he came out full gimmick and did his pose and honored Paul Bearer and then walked to the back. The only time he's ever appeared in the Hall of Fame ceremony, and the last time he'll ever appear in the Hall of Fame until he gets inducted. So that was a really cool moment in and of itself. And I think that I mean, the awesomeness of that was enough for me. I was totally okay with it.
Just one. Well, speaking of TV wrestling, what do you think of TV wrestling? The good of it and the bad of it. Give me the good first and the bad second.
So I think the good is the difference that promotions like Lucha Underground, for instance, are trying to make in pro wrestling. It is a completely different kind of style and presentation of the business that's never been done before, and that's awesome. That people are taking a different look and a different perspective of the wrestling industry and trying to present it in a different and fresh way. And I think that more promotions, be it local, national, or global, should be doing more of that to give it more of a new flavor, something that anybody can watch as opposed to just a wrestling fan. The bad of it, though, is oversaturation. WWE, between Raw, which is 3 hours, and SmackDown, which is 2 hours, and then everything that's on the network. Great content on the network, but there's almost too much. With TNA having Impact Wrestling on Tuesday nights, and New Japan having their English language program on Friday nights, and then pay-per-views on every other Sunday between WWE and TNA. And I feel like, and Jeff Jarrett's also wanting to get into the fray with all of that and get on the national level with that. There just seems to be too much. And I think in today's day and age, wrestling is changing, and wrestling is evolving and becoming something new and becoming something different, like I had mentioned before. The worst thing to do is to give too much of it to everyone, because then it gets too tired too quick. Yeah, you don't want to change the channel. The idea is to keep them locked on the channel, right? So burnout, I'm done with this, whatever, I'm moving on. That's not what you want to do, and I think oversaturation runs a little risk.
This is just my little opinion on the Lucha Underground. Like when they're doing the origin stories, it's a little movie.
Right, yeah.
Well, do you remember when WCW did like White Castle of Fear, Sting versus Vader?
Yes.
But it was like a little movie back then. To me, it's like that, but it's cranked up like 1,000 times.
Right, and it's because really Mark Burnett, who did Survivor, which is a great reality show, and Robert Rodriguez, who's a great Grindhouse film director, they partnered up with some great wrestling minds to put this on. And really the fun thing about it is that it's not a pro wrestling show that has cinematic vignettes. It's basically a made-for-TV movie that happens to feature pro wrestling. And that style of storytelling is very fresh and new, and I love it.
Thank you. All right, here's how I'm going to work this with you. If you could book one match, any wrestler, give me a singles match that you would dream to see yourself.
Alive or dead?
Either way. Give me one each if you want.
Yeah, okay. There are some matches that, for a bunch of different reasons, we'll never get to see. A match that I would have loved to have seen for more selfish reasons would be Sting versus, not The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels. I think a Shawn Michaels and Sting in their prime would have, without question, torn the house down. Again, that's a little more of a selfish thing because I know they've had great matches aside from anything that they potentially would have done with one another, but Shawn Michaels was the WWF guy that never ever jumped ship to WCW, and Sting was the WCW guy that never ever jumped ship to the WWF. Those two were arguably the franchises of their respective organizations, and to see them go head to head would have been crazy because it was something that you never thought would happen. That was like Goldberg versus The Rock, and not in 2003 when that happened. I'm talking about like WCW versus WWF, Goldberg and The Rock. All the missed potential invasion angle. There was some great stuff that could happen, and I think one big miss was Shawn Michaels and Sting. I would have loved to.
Tell you what, I wanted to see it. It was just weird. I put it out there. Everybody's like, I never thought about that, but it was like Sabu versus The Undertaker.
Interesting. You know, there was a period of time in WWE where that could have happened.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying, but
right.
it never happened.
That would have been
Cactus
interesting.
Jack, so I
That's
was
right.
glad to see that.
That would have been a very interesting one. There's a lot of matches that I could, it would take
I know,
forever to
it's
think
just,
about. There's a lot of stuff that would be really cool to see that we might never get a chance to ever see.
That's what I was saying. That one dream match, that
Yeah,
would be
I would
awesome.
say, if I had to boil it down to one, I would say Shawn Michaels and Sting in their prime.
All right, let's bring it out there. What is your favorite company that you work for?
That's a tough question. I love Pro Wrestling Ego and I love working here. I really don't think I can give an honest answer to that question. I work for the NWA, and I work for Elite in Louisiana, and I work for Combat Sport in Florida, Ego here in Mississippi. You know, it's like I said, it's hard to give an answer, so I'm not going to say which one that I had the best time or my favorite company to work for, because I don't really think that's fair. But the most different company that I've ever worked for is out of Austin, Texas, called Inspire Pro. They are unlike any other presentation that's in the Gulf South, and it's weird because most of their crowd aren't wrestling fans. You gotta be there to see it. They do a cross-promotional show every year with Chikara from Philadelphia. Yeah, and they're funny and they're quirky and they're weird, and it's the exact kind of wrestling promotion you would imagine there to be in Austin, Texas. You know, so I'm not going to give you a favorite, but that's the most different one that I think I've ever worked with. That's very, very, very interesting.
I never asked him about that. I always, you know, you never know what somebody might say.
Yep.
Well, what's your favorite kind of wrestling to watch? Lucha, strong style, old school, WWE, what?
Great question. So it depends on the climate. As far as the kind of wrestling match that I want to see, I will watch any match that is cohesive from beginning to end, and anything that both makes sense and tells a story. So whether it's a spot fest lucha match, or whether it's like, you know, a William Regal and Robbie Brookside match that'll last for 45 minutes, or go Broadway and all they're doing is hammer locks and headlocks and abdominal stretches, you could do anything to pop a crowd. Now, I mean, I'm half a decade into this business, which is not as long as some, so I'm not going to even come close to saying that I know everything, because I'm sure I never ever will in the first place.
Learn something new every day.
Right, exactly. But the one thing that I do know for a fact is that you don't have to hit this big, awesome, mind-blowing spot just to get a pop from the crowd. If you are working a hold for 20, 25 minutes throughout the match, and I don't mean sitting there in the middle of the ring with an arm, hammerlock with you. I'm talking about the progression of the match, focusing on the body part and going back, and maybe that person can't use their finishing move because their arm doesn't work because it's been in a hammerlock the whole time. It's the psychology that's important. So I don't care if it's lucha or hardcore or catch as catch can, or it doesn't matter what kind of wrestling it is, as long as there's that cohesion and that psychology, I'm a fan.
I agree 100%. If you can tell a storyline and read that crowd, listen to the crowd, and get their response all the way to the end.
It's about giving them what they want, right? You give the people what they want.
They're sitting on their hands, they ain't doing their job.
Exactly. You're supposed to be just as involved in the match as the wrestlers are. When you're a fan in the crowd, you are the third, or well, the referee's the third, so you're the fourth person in that ring, right? You're there with them.
The fourth wall.
Exactly. A babyface will do a perfect job of pulling you in and getting you to feel what they feel, and a heel will do a perfect job of making you just hate their guts. And if they can do that and rope you in and get you emotionally invested, it doesn't matter if they're doing 360 shooting star off the top of a ladder, or if they're, you know, headlocks and arm drags the whole time. It's scientific or spot fest, doesn't matter. It's about the crowd.
I'll give you a spot that was so simple and it got me every time Roddy Piper did it.
That's right. You know what?
I pop every time.
You know what? I'll give you one better. My favorite Roddy Piper spot is a variation on that. He grabbed the guy by the back of the head and he'd go in and then poke him in the eyes right there, while his fist was cocked back. I always loved that. I saw Arn Anderson once do. He was throwing punches, and he was nailing them on the. I think it was Alex Wright that he was wrestling at the time. And the psychology of that: if you're in a fight and you're getting punched in the face, you will eventually, at some point, duck.
Yeah.
Right? It's thought process. You're gonna duck. Arn Anderson was throwing these punches to soften up Alex Wright. Alex Wright got smart, ducked the punch, and as soon as Arn went to go for a punch, Alex ducked it, DDT right there. He was softening him up, to his credit, right? Yeah. But he was just trying to get him to duck, to position himself for the DDT that he wasn't expecting. Psychology, it's perfect. That kind of stuff is way better than any, I'm gonna moonsault with this ladder strapped to me. That's way better than anything to me.
Right. Well, let's see.
I like a good thumbtack bump, don't get me wrong. But it's not necessary every time.
Who is your favorite person on the indies to watch wrestling? You had to book a guy to come to your show. Who's the first person you're calling?
Man. I'm going to say it out loud and jinx it because he's going to go to WWE and I know it's going to happen. I absolutely love Ricochet, Principal Underground, Zack Sabre Jr. from the UK, who is phenomenal. And wouldn't you know it, they're both going to be in the WWE Cruiserweight Series, the Golden Cruiserweight Series. So, I mean, they're actually, I just saw on social media the other day, there was a clip of a Ricochet match, and I forget who it was he was facing, but it was 3 spots, and they slowed it down. Now, I don't want to make it sound like I'm dumping on Spot Fest, because I'm definitely not. I love a good Spot Fest match, but, you know, it's the pacing of a card on a particular night, you know. He did a standing shooting star and like a hand springboard into the ropes and back into a cutter, and just all of this stuff that was in slow motion, and it's graceful. It's beautiful.
He reminds me of Jeff Hardy back when Hardy
right when they first started. There's just such a beauty to the movement. But yeah, those guys are great. And honestly, I think with the Global Cruiserweight Series that's coming up, some WWE fans that are really just straightforward WWE and don't really watch anything else will get to see these 30-some-odd guys that are coming from all around the world, like Ricochet and all that WWE fans may have never been exposed to before, and that is going to open up a lot of people's eyes to a completely different genre of wrestling.
I like how they're doing this. Very, very different than anything they've ever done before.
Absolutely, and since the last Cruiserweight champion was Hornswoggle, they definitely need to do a little something to redeem that Cruiserweight division. Yeah, it was 9 years ago, but if they're bringing the title back for a tournament or whatever the series is going to end up being, it's time to redefine the division like they did back in the mid-90s.
Do you prefer to watch singles wrestling or tag wrestling?
I hate to be so on the fence, but both. Because wrestling is all about telling a story. And you're doing so by physical performance art. So if I just want to watch a match, chances are it'll be a singles match. But I appreciate tag team wrestling for so many reasons. You got guys who made their careers off of tag team wrestling that would get nowhere in singles, right? And it's a totally different kind of art form. My favorite part about tag team wrestling are tag team moves. Because those are forced into a point to get so creative. And that, I really enjoy watching the creativity come from guys in tag team matches that are trying to figure out something different to do. I really, really enjoy that a lot. If I'm just going to go out of my way just to, kind of relax and watch a match, it'll probably be a singles match. But you give me singles, tag, triple threat, 4-way, 5-man, 6-man, I'll take it all. Although I will say this. More than 6 men, I feel gets a little too much. I don't like 8-man tags, don't like 10-man tags. Battle Royals are a completely different thing. Of course, Battle Royals are awesome. But if I have something that's more than a 6-way or a 6-man tag, I feel like you're overbooked. You're giving me too much.
How do you feel about the Survivor Series elimination style?
So that's also a different story. You got 5-on-5, right? And those guys are dropped out every time, right? And it's a classic match type, and the elimination style is cool. But if you're giving me like Monday Night Raw, 10-man tag, and the whole thing inevitably ends up in a giant cluster in the ring, and that's a DQ, and it's a non-finish, and it's too much.
The only thing I'll say about that is I'd rather see 5-on-5 than 2-on-16 like they've done before. I'm just like, I'm just turn the TV off.
I don't mind handicap matches, but the giant lopside is...
Like that.
Yeah, there's
paid to see those.
Right, there's lines, there's limits for that.
Especially if the 2 guys are doing the job out, the 16 guys over here.
Right, exactly. So you've made these 2 effectively look better than the entire roster.
I remember DX doing that a few times, but I'll leave that alone.
Right. Oh, the Spirit Squad, right? Good for you, Dolph Ziggler.
Well, let me ask.
Well done, sir.
This will be my next to last question. But, what would you rather watch, a good heel or a good face?
Man, there's nothing better than a good heel making the crowd just hate him. That being said, I feel like there's a certain level of, just a certain something special for a babyface that the fans can just really fall in love with. And so, of course, everybody's going to go to Daniel Bryan, right? Everybody's going to think of Daniel Bryan. He's quintessential underdog. Get over, but he got over and everybody loved him. I truly feel like in today's WWE, the second coming of Daniel Bryan is going to be Sami Zayn. There, you have to have a certain amount of sympathy. And man, I tell you, Sami Zayn you want him to win every time. And there's something really special about, people complain about John Cena and people complain about Roman Reigns, and they're heavyweights that people are kind of maybe feeling pressured to enjoy. Maybe they're feeling pressured to cheer for them. Maybe they get shoved down your throat or whatever the case may be.
Video.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Video.
Thanks.
Sorry guys, nobody saw the camera.
There's this pressure, right, to feel from them that these are the guys you're gonna love. While I can understand that, it's more about the organic, the guys that you want to succeed, and there's a real genuine passion behind Sami Zayn for that. So I'm looking forward to seeing where his career takes him.
Well, this will be the last question, but it's on a personal level. Who's been there for you? And would you like to thank them? If so, here's your opportunity.
So, I mean, I have so many different people that, help me out in the wrestling business. Guys that have given me so much advice. Guys like Steve Anthony and John Saxon, who's helped me out tremendously and given me some great opportunities. Luke Hawks, of course, back when I originally started. Percy Pringle, as I had mentioned earlier. And it's going to sound sappy, but I'm going to go ahead and say it because today is his birthday. My father. My father has been the biggest champion for me in my career, and he's the one that drove me to do whatever it is that I wanted to do. And I dropped out of college to pursue a wrestling career and concert promotions and all this kind of stuff that I really wanted to do, and he didn't give me gruff about it. And I did. I was able to succeed at doing it so far, and I hope to succeed even further at doing it. And I really wouldn't be able to do it without his encouragement. So, to you, Dad.
My thing is, you never know if you're going to fail until you try.
That's exactly right. I took a huge risk that I wasn't even 100% sure if I should, but wrestling has been important to me since I was 6 or 7 years old, and I wanted nothing more than to be a part of this crazy, ridiculous, absurd world, and I am, and I couldn't possibly be having a better time.
If you do anything weirder than wrestling,
right. God, who knows?
All right, brother. Well, I sure appreciate you being on
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, man. It's been great.
I will see you around then.
Yeah.
Enjoy the show.
See you guys. I will. Thank you. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No problem, brother.